Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy MJ. Hello, and welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience Before the Pour, aka 20 Questions. My guest today is esteemed sommelier. I just love that because it sounds like I'm saying Somalia. Such a hard one. Wine educator and disabilities advocate, unique Yannick Benjamin. I was thinking of a nickname I'm call you unique. Yannick is the head sommelier of the University Club and a proud New Yorker from Hell's Kitchen, the real Hell's Kitchen. He's born into a family of French restaurateurs. Yannick has worked for many highly regarded restaurants throughout New York City: the Cirque, Oceana, Jean-Georges, Atlas, Felidia, Atelier, and the Ritz-Carlton. Additionally, he has worked for 10 years for Le Deux Wine, one of the top wine retail stores in Manhattan. In 2003, a car accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. However, his passion for wine drove him to quickly adapt, outfitting his wheelchair with a table that allowed him to continue working as a sommelier to educate on wine. He went on to create Wine on Wheels, one of New York City's largest and most exciting wine events. And Wine on Wheels brings hundreds of esteemed sommeliers together to pour over 180 wines from around the world for charity. Yannick's tireless work and innovative vision is bringing awareness and visibility to the seldom-heard voices in the wine industry and champion diversity and inclusivity. Welcome, Yannick. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor, and like I said, your voice is so incredible. It just it excites me. It's giving me so much energy, so much power. My God.
Awesome. I didn't know I had this voice. Really, I like first time so.
Definitely do.
All right, so we're just gonna warm up. I'm gonna ask you some personal questions. They're not too personal, and then followed by James Lipton's famous 10 questions from inside the actor's studio. All right, so we're just gonna answer them quickly.
Yeah.
Whatever comes top of your head.
Sure.
Ready, set, go.
Okay.
What is your favorite book?
Favorite book, Wine and War.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. What is your favorite movie?
Good Will Hunting.
Oh, I love that movie. I wanted to be Good Will Hunting, but I'm not that smart. Who is your favorite musical artist?
That's a good question. Oh my gosh. I would say it's Jan Tiersen.
Who is that?
He was the if you've ever watched the movie Amelie, he was the composer for the whole entire soundtrack.
Okay.
And he's
nice.
from where my father's from, and I just love his music. It's,
I love
it's
it.
mesmerizing, just like your voice.
I love that. That's a real story connection. Death Row, last meal. What's your favorite food? What are you eating?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. It would probably have to be something from McDonald's, like a Big Mac, French fries, something, just yeah.
Dude, I love that. I tell people, if I pair your wine with a burger,
Yes.
that means I really like your wine.
Yes. Exactly.
I don't want not trying to outshine. And to
Exactly.
this day, I've been a personal trainer. I just love junk food. Although I haven't been to McDonald's in a while, but
I have not been in a while, but yes, and also their vanilla milkshake. You can throw that in there too.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, who's your favorite athlete?
Oh, favorite athlete. That's a wonderful question. So not by personality, but just the fact that he's so rigid, is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh yeah.
And then of course, I've always really admired from the standpoint that I think he's had a very powerful voice and impact is Pelé.
Love it. He's a football. He's a football man. You guys, not American football, the real football. All right. What was your favorite cartoon as a child?
Oh my God, my favorite cartoon. There was a Saturday morning. It wasn't a cartoon, but it came on around 7:30, and it was super corny, and it was called Hickory Hideout, and I have no idea why. And it was on NBC at around 7:30 a.m. It wasn't a cartoon.
It was like the educational stuff before the cartoon.
But I would say also secondary. But Winnie the Pooh is the greatest. Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh. Love Winnie the Pooh.
He's also Yannick's a thinking man. What was your favorite cereal?
Oh, Cocoa Puffs.
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
I kind of know this, but people don't know this. What is your current exercise routine?
Oh, the hand crank that I have at home, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
But definitely the hand crank.
Yeah. I will talk about that because he puts in the work. Who's your favorite comedian?
Oh, Dave Chappelle.
Can't go wrong with
Yeah.
Dave. Who would you most like to have a bottle of wine with? And we can bring people back from the dead for this one.
If we could bring, yeah, I mean that's a really great question. There's a French philosopher and priest who passed away, but a while back. But his name is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and I mean he's quite an amazing man, and he believes in science, but he was a Catholic priest, which is kind of it's not supposed to make sense because if
Yeah.
most. So I love reading his books, and he's a profound thinker, and that's a guy that I'd like to sit down and think and talk with and drink some really good wine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to shift gears. I changed my voice just for this part. Who would you no, did that one already. Stop laughing, Lonnie. By the way, we use this as a blooper reel at the end of the season. I love it. Okay, Yannick, what is your favorite word?
Oh, my favorite word. Putain, whenever I'm frustrated, like, putain, it's so it's a very polite way. I try not to curse in English, but I can get away with that when I'm working or I'm stressed out. So putain, or even merde is also, it sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then shit.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. What is your least favorite word?
You know what? I just had a discussion about that with my friend Kilolo. Funky.
Oh,
And I hate when I hear the word funky. I don't know. It's just like, what does that really mean?
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna think about that one. What turns you on?
Or what turns me on? A smile on someone's face.
Love that.
Yeah.
Then the flip side is what turns you off?
People that are passive aggressive and you're trying to figure out like what's going on, but they're not saying anything, which I've done myself. But it's a big turnoff. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally get it. What sound or noise do you love?
When you walk on the leaves during the fall, that kind of crunchy kind of sound. I love that. Yeah, it's a beautiful. Yeah.
Someone else was a big fall. Oh, Stefan liked the sounds of autumn. Yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
When my dog is kind of whimpering at me because she's trying to communicate, like, please, I need you to play with me, and it breaks my heart. It's not that I dislike it, just like, oh my God, okay, I got to stop what I'm doing and give her some love.
I have Truffles the Wine, WHINE dog, and I know that feeling. I'm like, P, I love you so much. Stop whining.
Oh, but they're really the greatest creatures
the
ever.
best.
Oh gosh,
the best. Unconditional.
Unconditional.
What is your favorite curse word? You can
Well,
say it in French.
Yeah, I just said, but in English, I mean, for sure, I'd probably say fuck. Just straight up, just fuck, yeah.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, it would be hard being paralyzed in a wheelchair, but if I could, and that wasn't the issue, I would be a fireman. For sure. I mean, it's a job that I deeply admire, and it's something that I thought about doing for a long time, but a fireman for sure.
Definitely noble, especially in a city like New York.
Oh, yes.
So,
They have a tough job, yes, for sure.
For sure. What profession would you not like to do?
Oh, that's a great question. I think probably being a physics teacher or something like that, or something where it requires you to sit down and grade, and then you have to deal with the parents and especially like the helicopter parents. I mean, just a teacher. My sister's a teacher, so definitely I admire them deeply. I just could not do it.
And that's escalated since we were kids.
Oh,
man. I mean,
yeah.
It's parents are way
the
too
helicopter
involved.
parent, way too involved. Yeah.
And lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Come meet your two grandfathers.
Oh.
Because I've never met them. Yeah.
Oh, that is very touching. I would say, well, it was touching and it was fun. There's a lot of fun in there, but we really touched it. If you want more of Yannick, and I know you do, tune in to our episode of the Black Wine Guy Experience. All right, everybody. Peace. Hey, everybody. It's your boy, MJ. Welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is esteemed Somm, wine educator, and disabilities advocate, Yannick Benjamin. Yannick is the head Somm of the University Club and a proud New Yorker from Hell's Kitchen, y'all. He was born into a family of French restaurateurs, and he has worked for many highly regarded restaurants here in the city. Le Cirque, Oceana, Jean-Georges, Atlas, Felidia, which I said wrong, and Atelier at the Ritz-Carlton. He has also worked for 10 years at Le Deux Wine, one of the top wine retail stores in Manhattan. In 2003, a car accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. However, his passion for wine drove him to quickly adapt. He outfitted his wheelchair with a table that allowed him to continue working as a sommelier and to educate on wine. Yannick went on to create Wine on Wheels, which is one of New York City's largest and most exciting wine events. Every year, it brings hundreds of esteemed somms together to pour over 180 wines from around the world for noble charity. His tireless work and innovative vision is bringing awareness and visibility to the seldom-heard voices in the wine industry, championing inclusivity and diversity. Welcome, Yannick.
Oh, thank you so much.
Anything else you'd like to add, man?
No, but thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure and such an honor. It really is.
Oh, well, I'm super excited you're here, man, and I really am. I remember watching the Somm movies and like, fuck, this dude is a badass, right? Because like, I mean, we'll get into that, but Yannick and I connected through Instagram. Like he walks the walk. He's been following me for a while, and I don't know how, and I sent him a DM, and he said he'd come on, and before we get into like that, why don't we tell everybody what wines you brought today?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you. And you're doing such a great job. And I've listened to almost all your episodes. And I'm still missing 2 that I have to listen to. But I keep up the good work. And you're doing a great job. The 2 wines that I brought are 2 wines that I'm going to feature. I'm opening up a small restaurant up in East Harlem on 88 East 111th Street called Contento. And we're going to do a lot of great things there. We want the restaurant to be open for people with disabilities to come learn about the industry and other marginalized communities. And part of the wine list is going to have a section called Wines of Impact. And so these 2 wines that I brought, the first one that we're drinking right now is a Viognier from Elliott Vineyards. They're actually way up north in Israel, in the Galilee.
Oh, wow.
And this is, Viognier, pretty floral, aromatic. It has this phenolic bitterness to it. This is more of a kind of a low-key style, which is fresh and easy drinking, very quaffable. But what makes this winery really special, in Israel, they have this concept, or in Jewish culture, and a lot of people think I'm Jewish because of Yannick Benjamin, but I just, growing up in New York City, I feel like I'm a mosaic of different cultures,
Sure.
But this is a kibbutz, and kibbutz is like sort of being self-reliant. Your neighbor grows one certain crop, and one neighbor does milk, and you all kind of share, and that's how you kind of sustain yourself. And in here, this winery, Kishore, the people that work at this winery all have intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities. And I think it's such a wonderful project that they're doing because people in life need a sense of purpose. And so these individuals who normally probably would have difficulty having a place to go to or a place to go to work, they're making delicious wine. They're also growing other crops. But again, that they have meaning, and I think that's really a spectacular thing that they're doing there. Shall I talk about the second wine, or?
Yeah, we'll just because
sure.
Let's just rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
He came in hot. He first of all came in sharp, sharpest dressed guest so far, and he came in packing 2 bottles. So.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I love wearing suits. My wife is always trying to tell me not to always get dressed up, but I do love wearing suits. It's like
I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Sharp. I used to wear suits and But you look good, man.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Thanks for. I feel important. I guess we'll see.
Well, you are important, actually. You are very important. And I respect you immensely. The second wine that I brought in, actually, Pascaline kind of stole the thunder because this was the wine that I was going to bring before she came because she brought in a wine from Vermont. So she
Yes.
brought in from La Garagista, Deirdre Heekin, who's a
Yep.
wonderful person. So I actually brought in a wine from Vermont too because
Oh, get
we're
out.
gonna have a strong emphasis on wines of the East Coast.
Okay.
But also, this is also a wine of impact, right? And this is a winery called Elliott Vineyards. They're located right in Vermont, right?
Mhm.
Their fruit there is right on that Lake Champlain area, so unique microclimate. But they bring the grapes and everything's aged and made in Stowe. It's a lovely couple. Kendra is a veterinarian. Her husband, Rob Napick, he's actually the head of the physics department at Norwich College out in Vermont. So really smart and nice people who are making some interesting stuff. And these are really honest and pure wines. They're really big on regenerative agriculture, which I'm also a big fan of. So I'm like all about farming, and I think it's really important for our future. And this is made from a grape called Saint Croix. It's a hybrid grape that really thrives in cool climate, which obviously Vermont is kind of like cool climate. They like to call themselves alpine wines, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. So when you taste this wine, you'll notice that it has a lot in common with grapes like Trousseau or Poussard, those really geeky grapes from the Jura. A lot of, like, as I just said before, a little bit of this funkiness.
I was like, it's gonna be funk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
That's so awesome. Well, it's just so glad you're here. We actually had you scheduled. I don't know, it might have been like it was a while back, at least a month ago.
Yeah.
And then I get a message from you
Right.
like, dude, I'm sorry, I
Yes.
can't make it. You're in the hospital, and I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, at first I was like, fuck. I mean, no, I was like, dude, I hope you're all right. But then I
Yeah.
was like, scrambling to find a guest, which we found a guest, so it worked out really well. And
I
I always believe this though: things happen when they're supposed to happen,
Okay.
right? So so it just gives more to talk about but like, what happened there, man?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for your understanding. And I thought that I was going to be able to make it out, right? For some of you who are listening who don't know, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. So which means that I don't have any sensation or any motor. And unfortunately, in my case, I have to be careful. If I get a nick or a scratch on my leg, and on my left leg in particular, it does happen very rarely, but it does happen where my leg reacts poorly to a scratch that would be perfectly fine for anybody else. And I developed cellulitis. So the cellulitis was kind of under control. And then on that Saturday morning, it got incredibly swollen and red, and I was hitting fevers of about 103.
Oof.
So I went over to Mount Sinai Hospital, and then I basically was there for about 4.5 days, getting the good old IV. Thank goodness for penicillin, because I probably would not be here right now. It's amazing how these small little things can go really crazy. And unfortunately, I probably would have done the podcast on the phone or on Zoom if we needed to. I'm a team player, but it was one of those things that they were not letting me go. And actually, I continued a few more days after at home with the IV treatment, something that they call hospital at home. But all is well. But this is the life with paralysis. It has its challenges.
No, well, I mean, it's like that's like incredible. Like I think there's so many things in life we take for granted.
Yes.
And like you said, like what would be just a nick to someone could be life threatening to you. So just seriously glad you're all right. And,
well, thank you.
And it was totally cool. It's totally fine. But he literally he sent me a picture from the hospital, like with the wristband on. He's like, no, I was like, dude, I believe you.
Well, I don't know.
No,
people can be creative, right?
Well, exactly, right.
Yeah.
I concur. All right, so let's talk about young Yannick.
Yes.
So you grew up in Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
With French parents. Read somewhere your mother is from Bordeaux and your father is from Bretagne.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was that like growing up in Hell's Kitchen with French parents?
Yes.
So there must have been a food and wine culture in the house.
For sure. My dad worked along with his two brothers. They worked in some of the best restaurants at that time in New York City. Restaurants like La Côte Basque and Lutèce and La Grenouille, which is still there. There was definitely a dichotomy of two worlds, meaning that, when I left the apartment, or, 664 on 10th Avenue, which is between 46th and 47th, it was during the height of the crack epidemic. If you grew up in the suburbs, you're usually saying hello to the mailman or to the milkman or whatever, and I'm actually saying hello to the woman that's working the street, or whatever. And, they were always, they were good. You kind of like, they were doing their thing. They were working their hustle. All respect to them.
Yeah.
But then you'd come back home, and here I was, eating really good food. I come from a humble background, and our conversations would be things like, hey, have you seen that young kid who just got off the bus and has been hanging around the park and we haven't seen him? And what that really meant was like, oh, we hope he didn't OD, And you could, I guess, you have I have an incredible perspective, because you would see all these fresh-faced kids coming from wherever, and you could just slowly see them deteriorate, the skin breakouts, kind of like they were just all skin and bones by like 5 weeks, 6 weeks into it. So that was very unique in that sense. And to have Times Square as my backyard, people find it hard to believe. But it was definitely a unique experience. But I was really blessed, because I think my parents always, kept me on track, even though I would say that I was definitely far from a perfect kid. I definitely got myself into, and when I say I got myself into trouble, I definitely got myself into trouble. But I grew up incredibly diverse. Every school that I went to, I was definitely, it was Black and Hispanic, and I was a white kid, and I stuck out because I was a white kid.
Right,
you know what
yep.
I mean? And then I had this name Yannick, and I spoke French, so I was very exotic to them. You know what I mean? But I was just, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. It was really I only have really great memories, to be honest with you. For sure.
Do you think, as I hear that, do you think growing up, seeing people, right, struggle to make a living, and seeing, you hear the story of the fresh-faced kid, they come from Idaho to New York City, and then also being the minority in a school, do you think that, what do you think that really shaped you? Like, what comes to mind? Like, did it give you a more compassionate lens? Like,
for sure. I definitely, especially within the last 2-3 years in our industry, where we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and I'm like, I've always had empathy, and I always understood it. And in order to have really, that kind of empathy, and to understand what other people go through, and particularly those in the BIPOC community, you have to kind of experience it. And I don't know if I should be saying this, but I will anyway. But I've been on one occasion walking with two of my friends. I won't mention their names because they'll probably kill me, but who are brown skinned, and this is during the Giuliani days. And one of my friends was smoking a joint. I was not smoking a joint. I was super obsessed. I smoke pot here and there, but he was smoking a joint. And it was one of those things that, we didn't think of. And in comes a van, comes right in front of us. And they took us in, threw us in the back of the van. They were doing their quota, you know what I mean?
Stop and frisk.
Stop and frisk. They weren't even. They were
stopping.
They were just
a
like,
cost.
You're going and until you actually go through experiences like that. And I had the cop, like a couple of those, white cops tell me, like, they were looking down at me, kind of like, what are you doing with those kids? Oh, yeah, and exactly what you're thinking, like, you shouldn't be hanging out with those kids. You should be hanging out with people that look like you. And like that was in Midtown North. And then they took us to Midtown South. And then I was trying to I said I needed a phone call to call my job, because I was going to be in jail for a couple of, like a day and a half. They wouldn't let me do that. And so this is how these things happen. A small little thing could have, just a little fine or just a little slap on the wrist. And you know what? Thankfully, I didn't lose my job. But how many stories like that exist?
Oh, yeah.
And so I know a lot of people, when they watch the news or they hear other people's stories, they think, it can't possibly be true, or it's an exaggeration. But you got to be in the midst of it to actually believe it. And so, in that aspect, I've experienced many times. I mean, not many times being in jail, but the whole aspect of, like, being treated because I was around people of the BIPOC community.
Yeah. I mean, it's and for me, it's sad. Like I like expect it, so I have like this not a callousness, but I would say like how you get a callus and it's a little bit tougher, right? So like you
Yeah.
expect that, but people don't like until people don't like get it, like like
No, they don't get
I
it.
think about and just, I'm gonna digress. You went there like my first interaction with a cop, like we were. I grew up in the suburbs, and we were over at the high school lighting firecrackers, and someone called. It was me, my cousin, and the Puerto Rican kid, and the cops came in so hot, and he was like, and, and this is like first I'm like 13 and it had nothing to do with the police, and he's like, come here. I'm like, who me? He's like, no, the fucking man on the moon. Like, why do cops like talk to
God,
kids
yeah,
that? Like, I'm
yeah,
a kid, right?
yeah,
Like,
that's crazy.
I mean, they didn't take us or anything, but like literally, I think about like. And that's like in the little suburbs, like how bad it was. And I remember in the 90s coming to New York, stop and frisk and shit. And
Yeah.
just, you would see like my roommate from law school lived in Fort Greene when it was Fort Greene. And we were walking down the street one day and we heard, get the fuck on the ground. But it was the roll up on somebody else. Like the cop car came in all these directions, pulled out of people. And we were like not wanting to get shot. Like people don't understand. And I don't talk about it, but like, yeah, you have to understand, like, if you're a person of color, you do have to worry about your interaction with the police.
It's very legit.
It's just, Johnny Cochran once said, the most powerful person in the American legal system is the police officer because he can take your life and get away with it. And we've seen that way too many times. So
absolutely. And I like I said, like that experience, I could have lost my job and everything could have gone up. And I mean, of course, you go in front of the judge in Midtown North and it was dismissed. And I mean, life went on, but things could have escalated to a point where it could have gotten very bad just from a small little like joint. It was just, stupidity at its best.
Which is now legal. Go figure.
Which is now legal. Go figure. Exactly.
All right. So let's talk more. You said you used to eat good meals. Like, was your mother a good cook, or did your father cook because he worked in restaurants, or like who was the chef in the house?
Yeah, so my dad is a very good critic, but not a very good cook. Okay. My mom is a wonderful cook, and what makes her cooking so wonderful is the love that goes behind it. I've never met anyone that hasn't been to my house and my mom is cooking and they can just feel it,
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and my dad, I was blessed, my two best friends, or three best friends. One's Filipino, one's half Greek, half Mexican, one's from Honduras. And that's where we went to. We hung out late at night. We would come in, right, leftovers, and we would just pound it. And they just love my mom's cooking, So, when you have that kind of cultural diversity and they love French cooking, it says a lot about who the chef is, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So your family is, like you said, your father and your uncles worked in some of the top restaurants. So when did it become obvious to you that you were going to be in food and wine was your calling?
Well, I've always admired and I love my dad so much, and I've always looked up to him. I mean, I think about the fact that he stopped going to school at 14. He fought in the French-Algerian War. His first job was a dishwasher at a restaurant that still exists called La Grenouille, which we call the Grand Nuit, on 52nd. And he was just like always a total hustler, always trying to figure it out, and never didn't have it easy, but just figured it out. So that end alone always excited me. But I remember, we would host Sunday meals and having his two brothers come over, my uncles and some other friends, and just hearing them talk and gossip about the restaurant. It just sounded exciting. And as a kid, you start, we all go through that phase of like Hollywood and being famous and all that. And I thought, well, that's the closest thing to like being an entertainer,
Right.
And then I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I loved Cheers, and Sam Malone I thought was the greatest man on earth. I was like, this guy gets all the ladies. He's hanging out with his friends. He's got the easiest job. That's what I want to do. I want to go to work where I'm happy all the time, and that's what it is, And so, definitely, I had a big picture of the Cheers cast in my bedroom. That's how I love that show. I still love that show. So that definitely was kind of a catalyst, to be honest with you.
I feel you, man. I went to law school because of LA Law. But I saw Blair Underwood. He's a good-looking black guy.
Very handsome
I could say
guy.
I could wear a suit. I could go up.
Yes.
I can go. I object. Then I realized that shit is nothing like LA Law.
Yeah.
So I should have went the bar route myself.
It's okay. You're doing all right for yourself.
What was your first job in the industry?
My first real job, before working at Bryant Park was doing some side jobs, some side hustles. But my real first actual job where I wasn't getting paid cash was at the age of 16, and I did the opening at Bryant Park Grill, which is right down the block from where we're at right now. And that was really an exciting place. And you know, I put all my energy and my focus there. And then my grades started to slip, but I kept on working. And I was working first as a porter, then as a receiver, and then I was doing some barback shifts, even though I wasn't supposed to because I was under 18. But it was a magical time, and I had some really good supervisors, good managers. And right then and there, that definitely confirmed that I was going to stay in this industry for the rest of my life.
Oh, man. I love that. I love that. So you follow me, so you see my posts. You know, I dig pop culture.
Yes, of course.
And I read somewhere, in addition to your love of Sam Malone, that you after watching Cocktail, you wanted to become you're like Aruba Jamaica in your flipping bottle, like what
Oceana.
Was that the next level? Like you're like, oh my God, forget Boston, I'm gonna be.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that is love that movie Cocktail, especially like if you're an aspiring bartender at that time, and it was cheesy, kind of like 80s movie. And Tom Cruise actually did a really good job, I thought. The other guy, what's his name? The actor Brown.
Brian Brown.
Brian Brown, exactly.
Guy,
yeah, Australian guy who crushed it too. But I would take the empty bottles from Bryant Park after my shift, and then I would duct tape them, you know, and then I would flip them, and of course I had scars all over my, forearms. But that's what I want. You know, I wanted to be on the bar and like flip it behind my back and do the whole, you know, where you tip the bottle on your nose. And I mean, of course, it was just all about like, you know, it was that whole form of being an entertainer and pleasing others. Yeah, you know, it all goes back to that.
It's so true. It's so true. Like, there is this. I'm sure we'll get into it, but like there's a performance that goes on in what you do, you know, in beverage and food and real hospitality.
Sure.
You know, and you could even do that at McDonald's. Someone if they wanted to, they could up level McDonald's, but you know, instead of welcome to McDonald's, might take your order.
I've actually had some really good service at McDonald's. I've had some good experiences, some really nice people that work there, to be honest, but who have gone out of their way. I have to say.
I love that when it happens. I always acknowledge that when it happens too. I'm like, man, you got a good attitude. I'm like,
for sure.
Why wouldn't I?
For sure.
You know,
for sure.
I totally feel you. Yeah. I'm not shitting on the entire McDonald's community, guys. Okay.
No. I know you're not. No,
I'm just being goofy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You know, I lived in California, so I think everything I said earlier when we were warming up, I think things happen when they're supposed to happen. Everything's connected. So also read that you were influenced by Kevin Zraly, who was the wine director at Windows on the World.
Yes.
And we had Harmon Skurnick on. We haven't dropped that episode yet.
Yes. Okay.
So we're now in Kevin's circle. How did he come to influence you, and like what was that?
Well, interestingly enough, first off, it was one of the first wine books that I had. And I thought it was, you know, it really laid it out pretty lovely for, you know, newcomers like myself. And I think you would know this, but like in the 90s, that concept of sommeliers did not exist here in the New York City, in the United States, period. And even my father, who worked in 4-star restaurants, they didn't have a sommelier. Like the captain needed to know. The head honcho was the maître d', which has now been downgraded to like sort of like a host or hostess. Nothing bad, but the maître d' was calling the shots. You know, they were doing everything. But Kevin Zraly, they call him America's first sommelier. In many cases, I would say that's probably true. You know, he oversaw Windows on the World, which was this incredible restaurant that changed American cuisine and dining. And his book just completely inspired me. But when I worked at Cirque, I was 19 years old. I was a young kid. And the sommelier that was there, the wine director, was an American, still a good friend of mine. His name is Ralph Hersom. He has a retail store now out in Massachusetts. And I said, oh, God, this guy is just like, you know, serving wine. People love him. He's talking it up with the guests. He's not out in the back of the kitchen getting screamed at by the chef or getting plates thrown at him. I mean, literally, right? It was really rough back then. And I started, because my goal was to eventually become, either own my own restaurant, but to become like for, a maître d', be the guy in the front door, be the toll booth, right? But then he kind of took me under his wings. He was very generous with his knowledge. So there's that lineage. He worked under Kevin Zarelli at Windows of the World. So that's where, and he was kind of, his philosophy was very similar to Kevin Zarelli. So that's how it all, it really, connects with me.
I mean, it's funny. It's a small world, this world of wine at because everything has levels. So I think it's like sports analogy. Like, so baseball, you have AA, AAA,
right.
And then you have the major leagues. Like, once you get the majors, like, everybody kind of knows each other.
Absolutely.
And has been influenced by each other. So what was like your next job? We talked about your first job, the restaurant over Bryant Park. So what was your progression? Where'd you go next?
Right. So when I was in Bryant Park, of course, I wanted to go. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to just go to a straight up like hospitality trade school. And I would have liked to have gone to someplace in France and do, they have these like really great certificate courses, knocked it out like 15 months or a year, and then you do your internships and all that. And my dad was convinced. He was like, listen, Yannick, of course, like every immigrant's dream is your kids, goes to college, they become a politician, they become a doctor, a lawyer, that, all that stuff. But he was supportive. He was like, at least try college for a little bit. And he was convinced by the guidance counselor that we had at school, and she was not here, and she's like, what do you want to do, serve, tables and bus tables? Like, she couldn't understand that. I get it, whatever.
But you got to watch Cocktail.
You got to watch Cocktail. You got to watch Cocktail. You got to watch Cheers.
Yeah. You don't watch Cheers? Come on. These guys.
Yeah. Unfortunately, back then, we didn't have Hulu or Netflix. So I had nothing to, like, go back on.
No DVR.
Yeah, nothing, right, exactly. Oh, Jesus. But so then I actually did go to college.
Okay.
And of course, me being kind of mischievous, I was kindly asked to leave my first semester.
Wow.
And my dad and my dad said, okay, obviously, you give 100% to work, and you could care less about school. And so Ciro Macchioni, the owner at the time of Le Cirque, was looking. He was hiring for his new Le Cirque 2000 that was at the Palace Hotel. And my dad basically, he created a resume for me. I don't know if you remember, like Tandy computers, which was like this Radio Shack computer,
Radio Shack.
And how it kind of printed out. So he created that, like some kind of resume. My name's Yannick Benjamin. I'm looking to work. I worked at Bryant Park, and that kind of it was very cute. And I wish I still had that. I would have framed that. I might have it somewhere. Anyway, and he basically grabbed me by my ear and said, "Ciro," because they all knew each other back then. Said, "Ciro, can you hire my son, because he's he's a bum right now." And
such a dad.
And Ciro said, "I'm only gonna hire you right now because I feel sorry for your dad, because my son's decided to be in the restaurant business, and clearly you're as dumb as them. And I also feel sorry for you, because if you don't get your job, I know what's gonna happen to you, So, but it was very charming, like looking back, and he had a very profound effect on my life. And so I got hired as a bar back there, and that's how it all kind of, and then that whole world of like caviar and fancy ingredients and high-end service and gueridons and tableside service. That's where it all began.
Okay. How much time did you spend there?
I spent close to 2 years, and then I got, and then I started realizing that I was getting complacent and I wanted to learn. I mean, the money was really good. But so I started exploring other restaurants where I jumped around, at a place like John George and Oceana, and then Felidia, and then working at Atelier at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel for a great chef called Gabriel Kreuter, who has a restaurant on 42nd between 5th and 6th, who I think is one of the best chefs I've ever worked for. And that was really one of my first jobs as a sommelier, was working at the Ritz-Carlton. And I was working under master sommelier there. His name is Willie Schur, who is really one of the most down-to-earth, humble kind of guys I've ever met. And I kind of, the way I am today is a lot to do because of how he trained me, kind of down-to-earth and not taking things for granted, and, not shitting on anyone because they're drinking a wine that you don't approve of, and not understanding why they're drinking that wine. It's kind of like, understanding their perspective. Yeah. And being open-minded.
So, what's that? I have Victoria's coming on. I finished her book.
Yes.
So what's it like being? What was like? So it sounds like you had a good cellar rat experience, but like, what's that? Like, what's it like when you just at the bottom?
So I'll say this. Right now I'm probably about 4'11", but back then I was a pretty big guy. I was 6'3", and I wouldn't say that I was arrogant, but I knew my place. But I also understood hierarchy. I never talked back to my superiors, but I kind of just, I let them know, like, yeah, you can't shit on me. I've had, I'd say on 2 different occasions where I had 2 cooks or chefs try to shit on me in front of people. And then when I had that opportunity when they were by themselves, that kind of water cooler moment, and I said, hey, if you have a problem with me, I think you and I should go talk outside. And that kind of just, and I'm not saying that I was the toughest guy, but I knew how to get hit, and I got hit many times.
Like grew up in Hell's Kitchen.
But for sure, like, if it's easy to play tough guy when you're sort of protected.
Right.
And people know it's easy to talk shit to someone.
Exactly.
But like, if you really want to say that to me again, let's talk about it. And it wasn't a threat. It was just let's and we can see how that goes.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were talking before the show. It's kind of like a Goodwill Hunting moment. He's like, but if you have a problem with that, we can.
That's it.
Yeah. It's kind of like
you do it discreetly,
right.
And so usually you have to imagine people that really talk that much and that are just that malicious. There's no way that they could have gotten hit in the face, because we all know. Oh, yeah. Because it hurts when you get hit in the face.
Yeah.
It fucking hurts.
Oh, yeah. I've been in fights, and I got rolled once. People, and yes. Consequently, and I did martial arts. Fighting hurts, right? So you can tell people who've never been in a fight.
Yes.
Because they just popping off.
They're popping
too much. Like what Tyson say, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the issues with the internet. It
yes.
allows people to be bullies. Like, people would not say that shit to people's faces. Just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's that whole kind of, we throw this term a lot, but that sort of cancel culture, and there's severe ramifications, when you're just throwing shit out like that and trying to hurt people. Because it stays out there, It's one thing if we're in a room and I say, I don't, you piss me off, MJ.
Right.
When you throw it out and like,
yeah, it was like somebody was like, well, MJ pissed him off, like it'd be 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy, but I love that. I love how you and I just like there's this class about you like that just runs through your life from everything you've shared. Just like, no need to be belligerent or act up. You just quietly say, listen, and literally, like, let's go talk about it outside. Doesn't mean we're gonna punch, but like, don't put me on blast in front of people, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so what was you got this job, and you're working under a master somm.
Yeah.
And actually, and you told us about this earlier, people like the Somm movies, people don't realize like that was not. It wasn't a thing. Like someone, like there was like maybe, like you said, you come from a family restaurateur.
Yes.
It was like, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing.
It certainly was not a thing. And I think probably, and it really started, sometime after 2003, after 2004, because, 9/11 happened, and then the economy was somewhat stagnant. And then after 2003, 2004, it went crazy again,
Yeah.
It just went nuts. And I think that's when like somms and then restaurateurs or people who owned restaurants saw the benefit of having someone, talk wine and sell wine, the bottom line. And that's where that culture, and then definitely the Somm movie just like set it off. It was just unbelievable. And that's where, and then everybody like, even people that are just like wine lovers or, lifestyle advocates, they call themselves somms, which is fine. I know you could care less, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing too. Could get into that one too. So,
yes.
Well, I'll ask you some more questions.
Yeah.
So, what was that your job? What was the job where you were like, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was that the job when you felt you were like on your way? You knew you were tracking where you wanted to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Was working under Gabriel Kreuter at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Mm-hmm. And I probably mixed this up, but I was working there 5 days a week, and on my days off, I was working at Felidia, 2 shifts as a somm there under a guy named David Weizenhofer. So I was on the real hustle. So,
Oh, wow, man.
because my whole background was French, dealing with French wines, some American wines, and I really wanted to learn about Italian wines. And Felidia was just like this great place. I think I got paid $80 a shift, but it wasn't about the money. So I was on that real hustle. I wanted to learn everything. So yeah, I was on that trajectory. Like in my head, I said, I want to become a wine director of like a 3 Michelin, 4-star New York Times restaurant. That was where I wanted to be at because I love fine dining. Absolutely love it.
Awesome. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna come back. We're
Sure.
into your love of fine dining. Okay, we're back. So you were talking about like you just fell in love with fine dining, and then before that, you mentioned how the Somm scene really started to take off in like 2003. 2003 was the year you were in a car accident that left you paralyzed from the waist down. You know, we talk about adversity a lot on this show,
Right.
But you really have achieved so much. So what was it like? What was it like coming back from that? Like, I mean, because all I'll just say is like, if someone's never had surgery, like I can only imagine because you were in an accident, right? Like I had surgery once. And I knew I was having surgery. They say count backwards from 10, you go 10, 9, and then your clock is cleaned. You wake up 4 or 5 hours later, and you can't remember shit. Like, what was it like? Did you just like wake up and what happened, man?
Unfortunately, I've been under anesthesia probably, I want to say almost 10 different occasions, you know? And so people ask me if I'm afraid of death, and I'm like, well, if there's no afterlife, then death is not too bad because that's probably the closest thing. Because I don't even dream when and then I just wake up. So, so I'm certainly not afraid of it. But you know, with my car accident, I think I was on my way back home. At that time, I had this again great job at the Ritz-Carlton. I just felt like I was hitting my stride. I was 25 years old. You know, things were really kind of coming together. And, I was in a car accident that, listen, only physics can ever explain it, right? I mean, many people probably would have been in that same car accident and they would have been fine. In my case, that wasn't, and the bone that I broke, I could have broken many different bones. The bones that I broke, well, I fractured my ribs, but the most important bone, I fractured my vertebrae, which went hence, destroyed my spinal cord, which then kind of cuts off all my signals from my brain down to my legs. So I knew immediately, to be honest with you, right then and there, because I was very in tune with my body. I took very good care of it. And I knew, I said, oh God, like whatever is going to happen, there's going to be some long-term ramifications. I knew that something, because the best way I can describe it, it's funny that we're talking about Cocktail, Tom Cruise, but I had to get myself out of the car, right? And it was just instinct. And of course, they always tell you, don't move. But at that time, you don't think that stuff. There was smoke coming out of my car, and my instinct was just get the hell out of there. And to make a very long story short, I was able to pull myself out of the car, even though I had already lost any motor in my legs. When I finally got out of the car, I was laying on my back on the ground, and it was on 96th Street on the West Side Highway, and I'm looking up, and there's rain. It's pouring rain. It's late October, and it's cold, and the rain, it's just going all slow. And for some reason, I had a flashback of every little thing from the time that I stole bubble gum at Stop One Deli to just an intimate moment with my parents. It's really like I just had these, and then all of a sudden I had Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July saying to me, "Simplify, motherfucker, simplify." And I always loved that movie. And sure enough, I rolled myself over. And then I'm like, I'm digging my fingernails, my hands into the soil to kind of get up to the side of the road to get some help. And everything felt like hours and hours. Obviously, it was, probably a few minutes. And then finally, a cab driver, a livery cab driver. We had livery cab drivers back then. Now that doesn't exist. But he came on. He was like, oh my God, don't move. I'm calling the cops. I said, all right. And I was just completely spent. And then 4 women, I think it was. One of them who probably was in healthcare. She said, "Oh my God, don't move." Kind of had the like Rosie Perez voice, very sweet, And when and she said, "Aren't you cold?" And I said, "What do you mean? I'm okay." Kind of slowly. I'm like barely able to talk. Well, as I was climbing up that kind of like little slope, my pants and my underwear rolled down to my ankle.
Wow.
And so I didn't feel the cold and the cold water on my body. And it was right then and there I said, oh shit, this is bad. Like the fact, like not moving my legs is one thing,
Right.
but not feeling is another thing. And so that was a very hard thing. And then so, you know, I was in the ambulance and I had a wonderful EMT worker, and I just kept saying, think I'm gonna walk in? He said, I can't, you know, I can't tell you that, but it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be good. And then, you know, one thing leads it to another, and you know, certainly it has its challenges for sure.
Yeah, shit, man. I mean, I can't even imagine. So you have like this huge event, life-changing event,
Right.
and like, how did you like? What did you have to do to get yourself to be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go back to work? Like, I mean, obviously there was this long period of rehabilitation, I'm
Sure.
sure, but like,
Sure.
like, what was that behind your drive to rehabilitate yourself, or like what was
Right.
your thought process?
Well, my car accident happened on October 27, 2003. And then my last day of or when I went back home was January 9th, you know? So it was, you know, a good 2 months, a little bit over 2 months that I did rehab, that I was away, which is kind of insane in this day of age. You know, I probably could have been in the hospital for 6 months to learn, but, you know, with the world of insurance, it just doesn't happen. But in any case, you know, the truth of the matter is what always motivated me was, one, I was blessed to have a passion for the work that I do. So even while I was in ICU, I asked my mom, hey, and my family, can you please bring me some books, some wine books, because that's what allowed me to get transported into another world and to not lose my motivation. But I knew that I owed it to my mom and to my dad, who both came here with nothing, who worked extremely well, extremely hard, excuse me, I beg your pardon, to give me a life that I had. And that's what really motivated me. And I would never be able to live with myself if I knew that they had to explain to other people, like, you know, oh, how's your son Yannick? Well, he's just at home, you know, he's just living. He's just, you know, collecting a paycheck. And so that's what, you know, but I gained that work ethic through them. And, you know, it's my wife, you know, I understand where she's coming from. She can't possibly, she doesn't understand how I'm always working, how I'm always waking up so early like I do and go to bed late. But that comes from, you know, I mean, we all have insecurities, but my biggest insecurity is to lose it all. And then all of a sudden I'm in a nursing home because I can't afford, you know, and I need a skilled nursing facility to take care of me. And that's my greatest fear, and to miss it out. I have FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And so that's what motivates me, because I lost it. I lost it all pretty much at the age of 25. And I just, that's my biggest insecurity, but it's also what drives me.
Yeah. Well, and you said something, fucking, that's amazing. You said something about, and I see this, about how you're up so late and then you get up early. So
Right.
let's talk about your grind, man. Like literally, I'll go into your Instagram stories and it'll be like 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, and then it's like 5:45 a.m. and then you use a wheel.
It's a hand crank that I use. Yeah, so it's just like, imagine you using like a Peloton bike, because you have the use of your legs. I use the equivalent of a Peloton hand crank, so it's my upper body. So you've seen those hand cycles, but it's stationary, and that's my cardio. That's my zen. And I not only do that, but I also do breathing exercises. I practice. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Wim Hof.
Yeah.
The Iceman. He's a little wacky, so I do that, and then do a little like mindful meditation.
Oh, so you have a whole morning mindfulness and
for sure
spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Physical, spiritual.
No
mental
doubt
routine.
about it. Yeah.
Speaking of that, which, so like what did you have to do? By the way, just pause. Like, seriously, man, I see you going. I'm like, shit.
No, thank
I'm
you.
like, I like, and I appreciate, you know, in this industry where we do love food and wine, and it's very easy to go down a slippery slope of hedonism. Like, you like take care of yourself, man. You know, like,
Yeah.
and but let's talk more about the mental stuff you do, the spiritual stuff. So you said
Yeah.
so did I don't know, Hoff is kind of new, but the breathing, but like did you come across that in your recovery at first, like your rehabilitation? Like how did you begin,
Yeah.
you know?
So it's very interesting. I went to Catholic school, but the Catholic schools in New York were sort of like a slight upgrade from public schools, and so, most of the kids that went there were all blue collar kids. Most of them either their mom and dad worked at the theaters or down at the docks and all that. But if you had some kind of money, you try to push your kids. But Catholic schools are just terrible. I mean, most of these teachers had no business being teachers, right? Really, they were just awful.
Yeah, yeah.
They were these, but the people that I did meet, they were part of the Christian Brothers, and they had a real profound effect. A particular one guy, his name is Brother Tony Reynolds, who really had a deep effect on me, and I just always admired the fact that he would sacrifice family for the greater good, that whole kind of concept of servitude. Now, don't get me wrong. I am incredibly every single day I speak out against the Catholic Church because I do, but I will at the same time, even before I came here, I went to the back of the chapel in St. Patrick's Cathedral and I just sat there, and who I'm really talking to, or where my if my energy, where is it going to? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it gives me solace, and it's just that moment of peace and quiet, and I do feel at peace when I'm at a chapel and all that. And I can't say that I'm the most religious person, but I do go to church on Saturday nights at the Church of Notre Dame in Morningside Heights. And there's one reason for it, and I'll tell you very quickly because I don't want to ramble too much. But the priest there, Father Michael Holleran, he's one of 5 people in the world who knows the secret ingredients on how to make chartreuse. So he was a Carthusian monk who was for a number of years making chartreuse. And Pascaline actually knows him as well because she loves chartreuse. So he's an amazing man who I admire deeply as well. And I love going just to hear his sermons, but also to like kind of peace out.
I can relate to that. I'm not Catholic or I'm not religious. My mother was Jehovah's Witness, so that's woof. But as I've gotten older, man, I love going into church. Like we didn't go to church. Like I love going into church cathedrals. I think they're just peaceful.
Yeah.
They're totally peaceful. Like, and you go in and they're architectural marvels.
They're architectural marvels.
But there is an energy there. Like if you want to commune with your creator, whatever you want to call it, source, energy.
Exactly.
So I think that's totally cool. You still you go and I shit on Jehovah's Witnesses all the time, man. So I don't, but like because my whole family is, but a lot of us, unless we stayed in the religion, we're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get it.
It's complex, and it's incredibly complex. Like I said, I'm very conflicted, and I probably have more negative things to say about the Catholic religion than I do positive things.
Yep.
But it's more kind of like that foundation, and I just do feel comfortable. But I would in a church, but I would feel just as comfortable being in a Jewish temple as I would in a mosque. Yep. And I've been in both, and I just find that peacefulness in it as well.
No, I do. I think there is there's something in those structures. I agree with you 100%. Let's talk about Hoff. How'd you get into William Hoff? Actually, that's very interesting. There's a guy. His name is William Iceman Hoff, and he's a breathing expert.
Yeah.
And I have friends who've done stuff. They go, he'll take you like to a fjord in Finland and make people be in ice, sub-freezing water for 15 minutes and all this.
Yeah.
And you can control it through your breath. How'd you get into Hoff?
Well, going back to my being paralyzed, I think most people think, oh, he doesn't walk, and that's kind of the end game. That's the easy part, not walking. The hard part is I also lost my ability to control my bladder. Right, so I have no control of my bladder. So I've got to be very aware of what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, how much I'm drinking. So there's a whole science behind it. And for a while, I was having issues. I was battling constantly urinary tract infections, and they can be quite brutal. They can wipe you out, and then you lose days and days even after you're taking antibiotics. And I just said, what am I doing differently? So I had to, I was journalizing how much I was drinking, what I was drinking. I gave up coffee, anything that was caffeine based. And, really, I have to tell you, I started reading up about Hoff, and I said, and I think it really has improved my immune system. I always had a good immune system, but I think I have found it very beneficial. And since implementing that along with a lot of other diets, and other, philosophical way of thinking, and structure in my life, it's definitely, I've decreased my amount of UTIs, urinary tract infections. So I found it very beneficial. So I can't tell everybody to do Wim Hof, but he's a wild man. I mean, and I actually learned about him on a podcast, and I'm trying to remember. But in any case, and then I just went I
went down the rabbit hole.
I went yeah, exactly. I went down the rabbit hole, exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I do not play one on this podcast. But you just study placebo effect, so there is a huge.
Yes.
It's scientifically proven that what you're thinking will affect your recovery
100%.
and how you respond to medical issues. And like I said, just go Google placebo effect.
100%.
And so to me, that completely makes sense. And then, breath is everything. I mean,
It's everything.
I mean, see, I wish we had more time. We have time, but I could see we could talk for hours.
Yes.
Like with breathing, that's what they teach SEALs and snipers to do. Like those guys, ice cold, pulse doesn't go above 60.
Yeah.
Even that's how you control your body,
right.
your breath.
Right.
And like you said, it's again to your whole everything. What we take for granted, we think breathing is involuntary because it kind of is, but if you could harness the power of the breath, which you're doing, I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
They're like, talk about wine.
Do you want to pour a little Vermont wine from Ellison Estate?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Look at the color.
Yeah, it's pretty dark,
but it's funky. It's funky.
It is funky.
It's funky.
It is
funky.
It is indeed.
But you know what I mean. But it's not any more funky than a Cru Beaujolais, though. I mean, it's not.
Well, it's in that category for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
it's got that.
Yeah. It's a fun wine. It's what I call a crushable wine. But it's got that color of dolcetto to it.
Yeah, I love the color.
Yeah. But they're really good people, and if you ever have a chance, I know you. I always hear you talk about your passion and love for Paso Robles, which I think is great that they have such a strong advocate in you. But I would imagine what Paso Robles was maybe 25 years ago.
Oh, it sucked.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Paso Robles had to grow up. The wines were ass. They were flabby. No, they were. Anyone who knows. And my friends in Paso, they know 20, 25 years ago, it was still struggling. Regions struggle to find themselves, right? So Finger Lakes is starting to find itself.
Yes.
Vermont is going to start finding itself. I mean, a lot of this is climate change too.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
also willingness to do like hybrid grapes. But no, I love it all. I mean, I'll go visit a winery in Vermont. I mean, I know so much about wine. What I know about wine, I know from tasting wines.
Of course.
That's what I would say.
Exactly.
You don't learn your lesson by reading about it. No. I believe in that education, but it's getting your hands in the dirt.
Exactly.
So yeah, this is really interesting, and this is what's been fun is I love how all the guests you bring different wine and I love these interesting ones. This is so interesting. This is not something I would go to a store and buy, right? But now I'm like, oh, now I've had 2 wines from Vermont, in a month.
I know, that's so crazy.
It's bananas. Never had one in my life, 2 in a month.
Yeah.
Go figure.
I know, that's it. When I listened to that podcast, I said, of course she did it, Pascaline. Of course she, No, but it's, I think it's what I call, I don't know if this sounds pretentious, but it's an honest wine. It's a wine of purity,
It is.
It's unadulterated, you can really feel the grapes were harvested by hand. They were crushed probably by foot. And you have that, just beautiful purity to it. And it's a fun wine. And it's even nicer when the people behind the label are kind and good people, and they're making a difference, and they're adding something
Yes.
to everybody.
Yes. No, I agree. That's ultimately that's and it's the stories. Like every wine tells a story.
Everyone tells a story.
But I will say about this wine, love the color. It is it's pleasant. It definitely crushable. I could see chilling this down summer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And also would great with food. I can just tell it would just start popping off in different directions with some food.
You know what's great about this wine? It's got this like sweetness to it and ripeness, but it's not high in alcohol. So you can actually, you're outside, chill, barbecue food, some meats with marinade on it, dishes that are teriyaki based. I mean, there's some fun stuff to have. Like I said, I think it's just it's an exciting time for the Northeast region. In particular, or even the East Coast. There's some really cool stuff happening. I mean, I visited Virginia as well a couple times.
Yeah.
Some great stuff happening down there.
Yeah,
too.
I had Lee Campbell on, and
Wonderful.
She fucked me up with the wine she brought from Virginia.
Ah,
Because again, 25 years ago, it was all about Horton, Cab Franc,
yeah,
Viognier.
that's right.
30 years ago, I'm a little bit older, but to see I was like, this is a fucking Merlot blend from Virginia,
Yeah.
and even just the ripeness, like they weren't.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
crazy.
it's coming in like California. It was like 14.7
Yeah,
or something.
sure,
I mean,
sure.
but harmonious, no heat, and that's to me that's fun, right? Like that's the thing, and I tell people when they're like, oh, I haven't had any wines from Missouri. Like, oh, there's a winery in Missouri. Like everybody, like once they know wine,
Yeah,
like I'm gonna send
yeah.
you some wine. I'm like,
Uh,
that's probably gonna be better if I taste it at the winery.
Yeah. The first designated wine zone in America was in Missouri,
That's
Augusta.
crazy.
Yeah,
Isn't that bananas?
it's amazing.
That was the first designated wine
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
I actually tasted my first wine from Kansas a few days ago.
get out.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You gotta listen. You gotta be people at the end of the day. Be willing to try wines.
100%. Yes.
You're gonna learn more about it. So, when was it that you decided to go study with my girl Mary Ewing Mulligan?
So I will say this. I don't know if you recall Linda Laurie. She was an instructor there.
Okay.
She was quite tall, probably about my height at the time. And Linda Laurie was one of the first people in the wine industry that I had called that had found out about my car accident.
Okay.
And I called her up from the rehab that I was doing my physical therapy. And I talked to an admin. And I said, "Oh, I'm calling because I want to take your diploma class, and I just want to make sure is your building wheelchair accessible." Now, I'm sure probably for them that was probably the first time that someone was asking, "Is your building wheelchair accessible?" And the diploma classes were happening somewhere on 65th Street in one of those like fancy townhouses, right? That had like 5 steps or whatever. And so the woman said, "Well, let me find out. I'll take your name down and Linda Laurie, who was basically like the face at that time after Mary Ewing Mulligan of the International Wine Center, she called me up. She said, "Yannick, oh my God, what happened?" And of course they figured it out and they put a ramp there. And so I was taking some of my classes for diploma in that building. They were very accommodating and all that, but it was a great program. I mean, it gave me so much structure, and I love the instructors there. And some of them I'm still friends with, actually.
Supersonic. Why was that important to you to? Because you were, I mean, like you had a job, and you were working under Master Somm, and I know there's that whole path of, I mean, like like Andre. Let's take it like Andre. Andre took level 1. That's it.
Yeah.
And like. Why'd you feel why was that important to you at that point? In your life?
My relationship with academia is very kind of strange.
Exactly.
It's very bizarre. I mean, like I finished college at the age of 33. I went back. I did go back, but in one hand, I believe that especially in the world of, I'll stay more specific in restaurants. I think that it's really an industry that you have to be hands-on. That's where you're going to learn 90% of it. What I thought, and I still believe that, what the WSET, the International Wine Center, what it gave me was, it gave me structure. So, and that's what I very much. But it was also structure that I also enjoyed. So it was a topic that I liked digging deep, and I'm constantly like on a new thing. Like right now, I'm like digging deep in like molecular food and wine pairings, and I've got 5-6 books that I just bought. So I'm really super obsessed, and my wife's like, oh my God, kind of like that. But that's how my brain kind of functions.
No, I get it. I'm the same way. I mean, I went to law school, and I probably have. I went to law school and never went to class. It was amazing. But give me a subject. I read more books. I've read more books since I've gotten out of graduate school than I read, and that's when you're supposed to read a shit ton, right? Like
I'm the opposite. Yes, I agree.
I've read more books because I will read stuff I want to learn about.
Yes.
So I totally feel you on that, man. I totally feel you. So when did retail come into this mix? Because earlier you were like you're working over here for $80 just to learn about wine. Yeah. You're working 7 days a week, like
right. So I had my car accident, and I went back to the Ritz-Carlton hotel to work part-time, actually, which was like amazing. And I was doing like a lot of office work and admin stuff, but it was great just to kind of build up that energy and, again, that sense of purpose. And I had a couple of setbacks health-wise. I had what they call pressure sores. So for me, it's really important that I get the right cushion and all that. And my body was changing and all that. And so I had developed what they call like a stage 4 pressure sore, which means that it's basically, and I don't mean to be graphic, but I might as well because I need to educate everybody.
Yeah, please.
You can, at that time, you could still stick 2 fingers. It was literally just a hole. It was a cavity. That's basically the bone that just keeps pressing and it just kind of tunnels. And trying to heal it up, and then my body just gave out. And then finally, I found this amazing doctor who said, I can do surgery on you, and we can close that up. And I did that. And so just before I was going into surgery, a dear friend of mine said, let's go out and get shit-faced before going to surgery. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I said, yes, of course. So we went to one of your former guests, Robert Bohr, went to his restaurant crew because they had like a crazy list. So we went to the bar, and we had a couple of wonderful bottles of wine. And the waitress there, Rocky Gray, who actually works for Robert Bohr now at Grand Cru Selections, we kind of befriended each other. And she was very good friends with Jean-Luc Ledoux, who was about to open up a wine store. And he's from the same village as my dad is in Brittany. And so we, of course, knew of each other. But I said, hey, I'd love to talk to him. I need some career advice. And he's established. He worked 10 years at Danielle. And he's one of the OGs of the Somm industry. Yeah. And so I gave her my number. Sure enough, the day that I was going in to get surgery, he calls. I see a missed call. Didn't answer because I'm like all down in the dumps. And I listened to the voicemail, and it's Jean-Luc. Hey, man, I'm opening up this wine store, and I'd love to see you if you're interested. I'm like, fuck me. What kind of luck? So I was basically in the hospital after that because it's very invasive surgery. I was in the hospital for over 3.5 weeks. And I had some complications, got blood clots and all that kind of stuff. And then finally I had the courage after I came out of the hospital to go visit him. And he said to me, listen, man, I hired my team and I would love, and I said, perfect. I need to go backwards. I need to go backwards. Can I come and work for you whenever and come in whenever I want, but I'll do whatever you want. He said, you want to work for free? I said, I want to work for free. I need to figure this out. I need to learn the game again. I need to go backwards. I need to regroup. And that's how that relationship all began. That's how it developed.
Shit, man. There's just this theme of grit and perseverance, man, through your story. That's just
thank you.
It's very inspiring. So you're studying for you to become a master sommelier.
Yes.
And I read it took how many times for you to pass the exam?
Well, I did not pass the master sommelier exam. I passed the advanced. I've taken it a couple of times. So I did not pass it. I passed the tasting portion. And the service portion, and I was left with the theory, but I didn't bone down. And as the years have gone by, I've realized why I did not pass theory, because theory is the one that you actually control. It's the portion that, because the blind tasting is a little tricky, right?
Yeah.
And then service could be tricky too. But theory, if you spend and dedicate a few hours a day or an hour a day, you could probably pass it, right? But then it's a matter of trying to find time if you're working in restaurants. With that being said, I started thinking. I said I just was too afraid, and so I knew that I could have passed theory because I had passed it before, but all I had was at that point, and and I was scared because I was going through, and you hear this a lot now, and I said, that's fucking what I had. Sorry. Imposter syndrome.
Right.
And I was
Right.
afraid if I passed it, that I was going to get bombarded with questions and like, is this guy legit and all that. And now I'm in a stage of my life where I'm like, yeah, I'm legit. I feel good. I've grinded. I've done everything that I'm supposed to, you know. I'm kind of old school like that. But at that time, I'm not saying that I was trying to self-sabotage myself, but it's a weird thing that here I was, you know, passing service in a wheelchair, which is really hard. And the theory was really the one thing I actually could control, but I was known to be a theory machine, and I didn't take the time to study, which, you know, all of it's really bizarre. So I definitely didn't do myself any favors, and I was definitely deep down inside, looking back, I was dealing with something that I decided to kind of push aside.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think everybody, I mean, just about everybody except for narcissists has it. You would have to. It's.
Right.
I mean, having this podcast, like, shit. Who am I? Yeah, I mean, that's what you say. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I to be sitting down with Yannick Benjamin?
Oh, get out of here! Come on, that's how I feel about you.
I mean, but I feel you, and also I love what you said, and that's the thing. Like, it's subconscious. It's not even like it should be subconscious self-sabotage.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. We don't. It would be like literally like, why did I do that? Like, you don't even know why, right? And like you said, and for you, like, you watch the movie, like, the service is like the hardest part. Like, someone, who was it? One of our guests was like, they were like, they didn't like her outfit or something. Yeah. Jordan.
Oh, right. Yeah, Jordan Salcido.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she was
sure.
saying she's on like the she didn't pass service. So like, they didn't like her blouse or something. I mean, so, but like you said, the one thing that's in your control, your subconscious took away. So So that's just, guys, just listen. I mean, this is really, like, you know, all you aspiring somms out there, like, just, you know, there's a lot of work you got to do, mental and spiritual. It's not just
Yes, well said, and I agree with you. That's the one part, and also don't forget that you need to know numbers and understand how to run a business. You know, because that memorization and of like all the Grand Crus and the Grosse Gewächs and all that will only get you so far. At the end of the day, you have to you know, respond to your bosses and to a board or whatever the case is, and you have to be able to explain to them what exactly is being said on that P&L sheet.
Right, and that's the thing too, right? Is like we it's been great shedding a spotlight on this career, but I think people don't understand it's a job, and like, if you want to advance, like you said, there's a whole business. And at the end of the day, it's a business. Like you said, you either have a board or directors or someone who's like, dude, I could give a fuck about cleaning my shit. I mean, I love drinking it, but like, we're not making any money, bro.
Yeah,
like,
we've got to pay the rent, we've got to pay the, you know, the electrical bill and all that kind of stuff. I think the biggest flaw with wine education, and there's a lot, you know, but the biggest one is that we simply don't teach the business side of wine, both from a importer perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, just from if you're a beverage director's position, because it's not just about wine too. It's also about like cost of the cocktail and spirits and all that. So there's a lot of work to be done in that aspect for sure. Yeah. And I hope that changes.
Very cool. Tell me about Wine on Wheels.
Yeah, Wine on Wheels was started in 2012, and I owe a lot to that to Jean-Luc Ledoux, who was the owner of Ledoux's Wines, where really gave me a platform and my start after my car accident. And he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately, but he was a wonderful human being. But he would just give us the store to me and Alex. And Alex, who is the co-founder, he was also in a car accident. He's a quadriplegic, which means he's paralyzed from the chest down. So, and we befriended each other because we were roommates. So you can imagine 2 months, you know, during a very crucial time in your life, you really develop a strong bond.
Sure. Wow.
And we knew that we wanted to eventually, when our lives would settle down, that we wanted to create an organization, a small hands-on nonprofit, especially where the co-founders have that disability. It's not like, you know, actors or whatever.
I know. I worked for a nonprofit.
You know
there's a nonprofit industrial complex out there.
Okay. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So we definitely started that. So I was the guy who was gonna, you know, do the whole fundraising, and Alex was the guy who was gonna, you know, do do all the development, as far as trying to get people what they needed, wheelchairs and certain equipment that, Medicaid would not pay for, catheters, medical supplies that I would say most things that critical mass doesn't know about,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know the intricacies and how complex the insurance and Medicaid system is. And so it's important to have those advocates there on your side, especially for people that are just new to your disability, because it's a lot to absorb. It's a lot to deal with. And then all of a sudden you've got to get bombarded with insurance stuff and all that. So, Wine on Wheels was started to generate money, to raise money with some really fantastic sommeliers, wines that were donated by some really great importers and distributors. And we raised some good money, and we've continued to do so, except for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And we hope to do so maybe next year again. I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen this year, but it's been a very good run, and we hope to continue it in the future.
Yeah. Now, also, I saw somewhere um, you're involved. So we all started kind of coming full circle, like Wines of Impact. You work. I saw a rosé wine, but aren't you doing something with some wines
Yeah,
that are for sale at retail that are actually?
sure. Yeah,
So,
thank you for bringing that up. So one wine is called Liquid Geography, and that's brought in by a wonderful import company called Ole Obrigado. And the gentleman there, his name is Patrick Mata, and he's been an angel. I mean, really, and I mean that. He's been so good to us at Wheeling Forward. We're so blessed to have him as a friend. Um, and because of Liquid Geography, all the proceeds comes to us and another charity that he's involved with. But during the pandemic, to receive the check that we received from him was, just it was a game changer
mm,
because we were struggling,
mm-hmm.
and he's done a lot. So there's a lot of incredible good people. We actually recognized Patrick Mata last year, but we were not able to give his award in front of everybody at One on Wheels, for all the generosity and for all the goodwill and work that he does for us, and also giving us a platform. So we're very blessed to have individuals like him. I mean, it's very humbling. He's a good human being. So Liquid Geography Rosé, it's from Bierzo, it's Mencia, it's delicious, and it's very affordable. I mean, usually it retails anywhere from about 8 to 10
Yeah, it's
bucks.
like 8 to 10.
And
Right.
it's super easy, perfect rosé by the pool with anything. So check it out, and it all goes to a good cause. I can tell you, it all the proceeds comes to really good charities.
That's awesome, man. That's such a cool project. So you do all this stuff. You're Somm and you retail and you run a nonprofit and you're an advocate for inclusivity and diversity. And now you're adding restaurateur to your resume. What's going on there?
Yeah, so a couple years back, my friend and also mentor, George Gallego, who was one of the first people that I met who coached me through my injury. He's a paraplegic as well, and he's an accomplished triathlete,
Mm.
and he's done quite amazing things in his life. And he was the one that inspired me to do marathons, New York, Boston, Chicago. And he was always like, "You've got to open up your own place. You've got to open your own place." Well, there was an open, empty storefront that nobody was going after, and he saw it and he knocked on the door, and him and another friend said, "Oh, we should try to do something." And George said, "Yeah, we're not doing it without Yannick." So he calls me up. I thought he was just asking me for advice. He's like, "No, you're going to be like the guy here." I said, "Oh my God," because he was just always insistent. I mean, this is true love, right? Someone to just push you
Mm-hmm.
to achieve your dreams, and I would not have done it without him. And we have another partner there called Lorenz Skeeter, who was he had a business right next door to it, a courier service, and he was trying to do something with it too. So it all really worked out. All the stars aligned. The name of the restaurant's called Contento. It's on 111th Street between Park and Madison, and the way the restaurant's designed, it's universal design, meaning that it's accessible. We have 5 seats at the bar. That's counter seating. So, MJ, when you come there, you and I, you won't be sitting at the bar, and I'm gonna have to look up at you. We can we're looking to each other eye to eye,
Perfect.
and we're hoping that we're gonna have other people with disabilities come there who want to learn about the hospitality industry. They can work there or do an internship there.
Mm.
We have a wonderful, wonderful team there, both back of the house and front of the house. The food's going to be absolutely delightful. We have a gentleman named there, Oscar Lorenzi, who's Peruvian. And he's crushing it, and I'm very happy and honored to be working with him. And we definitely have a very good crew, an honest crew. And we're also going to be doing classes there to teach about wine. But it's not about just teaching wine. It's also like if we do a subject on wines of Italy, we're going to talk about what's the current events happening in Italy, because we want these individuals when they go out to the workforce that they have knowledge and they have content that they can talk about current events, because we don't teach civics. So it's not about what's in the glass of wine, but it's what the glass has to offer as far as the conversation, and that's what we want. And so hopefully when the restaurant opens, this is what we're going to start doing immediately and effectively.
That's just. I want to give you a stand over.
It's
so great. That's so freaking awesome, man. And I think you talked a little about the list. The wine list also is going to have you said a heavy focus on the Northeast, but also wines of impact.
Yeah, wines of impact. So we're going to have wines of impact. There, just to, I want to carry, like, there's a winery out in Santa Barbara called Elliott Vineyards, and it's owned by a Native American woman, things of that nature. And I want people from different cultural backgrounds who are really kind of like, breaking the barriers, who are making an impact, who are just saying like, no, the what you think should be normal, meaning like, the pretty white couple on top of the hill, no, there's a lot of other people who like wine and who like to drink wine. And so definitely having that emphasis. There's a guy named Roberto de la Mota who makes a wonderful wine in Mendoza. It's called Mendel. He's a paraplegic, so really featuring that. But again, it's not just about social sustainability, but what they're doing for the environment and farming practices and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to have it broken up, where there's going to be a section called Wines of the Ancient World, so featuring wines from Lebanon, from Israel, from Georgia. So that tells a story. I want to make
the country, not the state. For
right.
The three, you're like
exactly, exactly. I'm also thinking about adding a section called urban wineries. So wineries that have, that are in an urban setting. There's one out in Paris. There's a couple out in Portland. We have City Winery out here, Red Hook Winery. So doing some fun stuff. I think that's really important. So I'm thinking about putting a section like that. It's going to be a small list, but an impactful list, and it's not an intimidating list. And we're not going to just like geek it out. There'll be wines that hopefully people recognize by label. I'm not going to just have nothing but like grapes. Oh, I never heard this grape before, but like a good Napa Cab, nice Malbec, things of that nature. Which other Somms unfortunately kind of poo-poo for whatever reason. I love having a nice Napa Cab. I like having a nice Malbec. So we want to make sure we're not buying wines for ourselves. We have to understand our audience, and that's what's really important.
Yeah. I love that. This is a really exciting project. I can't wait to come down.
Yes, super VIP.
So you've had all these experiences. Was there a bottle of wine? Like what was the wine that made you go mad? It was so good. Like what wine was that, man?
Very good. The wine for me was definitely, I would say, Joseph Roti. His Gevrey Chambertin, or Joseph and Philippe Roti, the Champcheny. It was a wine that was given to me by my mentor Willie Schur when I was in the hospital after my car accident, and I had not really tasted any wine for almost well over 2 months. And so on January 9th, I'm looking out on my window and it's full of snow. It's like 9 inches, and I'm like, how am I going to get through this snow in a wheelchair? Like, holy crap. Like, that's like the anxiety was building up. And my dad was there. My mom was cooking because it was my first day back. And they said, let's open up some wine. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I chose the Joseph and Philippe Roti, and we opened it up. And it was kind of like when you're a kid eating a cherry or a peach for the first time, the flavors just exploded, right? And that's what I felt. And not only that, besides the flavors, but the stimulation that I got, and then right away I said, okay, I got to figure this out. Like I because people were telling me like, maybe you should go into law because I was still young enough, or go into, IT. And I said, oh, come on, man, my brain is not conditioned to sit behind the desk. It's just not. And I said, no, I want to be in this world of food and wine and hospitality. It's just so important to me. And so that wine was actually quite life-changing for sure.
Shit, wow. So lastly,
Uh,
what would you say is you're finding most exciting in wine, the world of wine right now?
what do I find? Yeah. So again, the thing that I would probably say the most exciting, and it's unfortunate that it had to happen this way for me personally, meaning that I've been very blessed. I'm very privileged that I've traveled to a lot of spectacular places.
Mm-hmm.
But because COVID happened, obviously we were not able to travel. And what it really did, and I've always been proud of what we can do out in on the East Coast, but it really forced me to dive deep into the East Coast terroir. And I think, you know what, I'm just so mad at myself that I've taken them for granted. We have such a complex geological diversity up and down the coast. We have such amazing, passionate farmers out here. And so going from, I mean, I visited a place called Elliott Vineyards in Maryland, and their wines were legit, and they're farming, they're doing regenerative farming, some wonderful stuff. And then visited this guy, Glen Manor, and the vineyard side is spectacular. It almost looks like Côte Rôtie. You know, you need four-wheel drive to just get up to the top of the hill. And they're doing some delicious Cab Merlot blends and Petit Mensong, which is it's a delicious white grape. And so, and then when you visit wonderful, humble producers from Vermont to the Finger Lakes and to down even in North Fork, I've been incredibly inspired, and I'm so proud of what they're doing. So that's what's really making me happy. And I think we can't possibly practice sustainability. We can't practice, oh, I got all these organic producers and biodynamic producers, and I'm aware of the carbon footprint. But then you look at the list, you have 500, 600 selections or 1,000, and you don't have one local producer. And I don't have a problem with that. But don't talk about, you know, how you're obsessed with the environment when you're, you know, or you're like, yeah, local tomatoes and local this, but you're not supporting. Now, listen, if you don't like the wine, you don't like the wine. I get that part. But you cannot tell me that there's not some people, there's not wineries or beers or whatever it is that they're doing some fantastic stuff. I had sake in Brooklyn Kura, and it was good. It was delicious.
Yeah.
And why? Because we have the best water in New York.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly enlightened about what's happening here.
Well, that's awesome, man. Oh my God. You know, we book studio time, so I could talk for hours, but we can't. He's also got to get to work. But
Thank you, Don.
But man, thank you so much for being here. Tell people where they can find you and they can be a part of what's going on with you.
For sure. Our restaurant's going to be ContentoNYC.com, and then the nonprofit is wineonwheels.org. And then you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all under @Yannick Benjamin. And same thing with Wine on Wheels and Contento. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for being here. Really enlightening. Thank you for being so generous and sharing your story and vulnerable and just super inspiring. Everybody, it's MJ. Until the next time, cheers to the Mavericks, philosophers, deep thinkers. Yannick, you offer all these. And definitely to all you wine drinkers, take care. Peace.
Thank you, MJ.